Welcome to KetoMealsAndRecipes.com. It's occurred to me that I haven't posted a bread recipe for quite a while, so today I will be showing you how to make an amazing, nutrient-dense, and I do have to caution you, this is an addictively delicious Keto Falafel Flatbread, which is completely grain-free and vegan. And as with all my recipes, it's completely gluten and grain-free. Before continuing, I would like to mention that this recipe was inspired by Lisa at Downshiftology, and the link for the original recipe that she produced will be posted in the description below. And I'd like to thank Lisa for the inspiration. And as Lisa did in her video, and I thought was excellent, I'm going to also show you how to make 6 open-faced sandwiches to show you what you can do very easily and quickly for lunch or dinner. And for this particular video, all the toppings I'll be showing you are going to be vegan, but if I do say so myself, are absolutely delicious, whether you're vegan or not. They're just good. In addition to the 6 keto sandwich ideas, I will also provide the full macros for each of these vegan sandwiches. So please do watch the entire video, and also please do check out the end links because I will be providing more suggestions and ideas for recipes that you may like if you like this video. Now let's get down to business. The macronutrient ratio for the Keto Falafel Flatbread is 2.5 to 1, with 6 grams of total carbs, 2.1 grams of soluble fiber, and 0.4 grams of insoluble fiber, resulting in 3.6 grams of net carbs per one of the 16 slice sections. However, if you would like a larger piece of this keto vegan falafel flatbread, here are the macronutrients if you cut it into 12 pieces. Each of these 12 pieces is just slightly smaller than a typical store-bought piece of white bread. I would like to mention that this is a very dense and very filling bread, so you may want to try the larger piece and then switch to smaller pieces because it's very filling. Now, the very first thing you should do, which you should do about 1 or 2 days before making this recipe, is to take your blanched raw cashews, put them into a medium-sized bowl, cover the bowl with water, and when I'm soaking any nut, I like to cover my bowl with cling wrap. Then you can either leave it on the counter or put it into your fridge for a minimum of overnight, but I really prefer either 24 and when I have time, 48 hours of soaking time. This plumps up the cashews to their best advantage for most of the recipes I make, including my vegan cheesecake, which uses the same soaking method. Also, part of the prep step I like to do is to preheat my oven to 200 degrees Celsius or 400 Fahrenheit and line my baking sheet with parchment paper so that everything's ready to go. Now that my cashews have soaked and plumped up, the first thing you have to do is drain the water, and I strongly recommend that you just give the cashews a quick rinse under cold water. Now, put the cashews into your food processor and add equal parts of parsley and cilantro that you've previously roughly chopped, your jalapeno peppers, your chopped onions, and garlic. The next step is to add my seasoning directly into the food processor bowl. I started with adding my cumin powder, my finely ground salt, cardamom powder, and finely ground black pepper. Now that everything is in the food processor, pulse to blend until the texture is very rough and has a large grainy consistency, but don't overprocess at this point. Now, to the food processor bowl, also add the whole psyllium husk, the hemp hearts, and the almond flour. And although you don't see it, I actually added some water. And then let this dough rest for about 5 minutes while the water is being absorbed by the almond flour and other dry ingredients. And the last few ingredients that I add are my olive oil, the baking soda, apple cider vinegar, which activates the baking soda, and glucomannan, which is a binding agent. And you guessed it, you have to pulse again to combine these ingredients well. Now the dough is ready, scoop it out and put it on the parchment-lined baking sheet. And spread the dough out over the surface to make about a 1/4 inch thick layer. I would not use a rolling pin for this because it'll compress it too much, so just use your fingers and gently press out the dough, starting from the center and working towards the outer edges. You'll find that this will work very easily because the dough is quite pliable. But please do not put too much pressure on the dough because you really don't want to flatten it out. Pressing in this way, I made a rectangle that was 14 inches by 9.5 inches or 35.5 by 24 centimeters. And since it's very little extra effort, I use the back of my knife, as you see here, to even out the edges. And now that I've completed shaping my flatbread, I put the tray into the middle position of my preheated oven and set the timer for 15 minutes. Your time may vary just a little bit, but I would not bake it for more than 20 minutes. And when your timer does go off, immediately remove the tray from the oven, leaving the flatbread in the tray. Let everything cool to about room temperature. You want to do this because the bread is very fragile at this point, and if you try to move it, it will crack. Once your flatbread has reached room temperature, use your parchment and slide everything onto your cooling rack. Then using a cutting board, flip the bread to peel off the parchment, and then reposition the flatbread onto your cooling rack so that the bottom can dry as well. That should take about 30 minutes or so. Now, as I said, you have two options. You can either make 12 slices or 16 slices. Because this bread is truly very filling, I prefer to use the 16 slices, which is cutting this flat sheet into 4 rows lengthwise and 4 rows along the width. But if you want larger slices, then just cut everything into 4 rows lengthwise and 3 rows along the width. And here you are. You have perfectly delicious Keto Falafel flatbread. By the way, this flatbread can be stored in the fridge for several days. Also, this Keto Falafel flatbread can be frozen if stored in an airtight container for 2 to 3 months. Just remember, place a sheet of parchment between each of the pieces so that you can take them out one at a time. And you don't have to thaw the entire batch to get your pieces apart. The best way to thaw is take however many pieces you want. Then you can either use them as toast and put them in your toaster to crisp up, or pop them into your oven for 2 to 5 minutes. The time will depend if you just want to heat up the bread or if you want it toast-like. And here's the fun part. Now I'm going to show you the 6 sandwich toppings. The first is very simple. It's just my vegan butter on the falafel flatbread. For this version, what I did is I used 2 teaspoons of my vegan butter, which, by the way, is going to be my next video. So if you want a dairy-free and consequently vegan nut butter, please come back and check out the next video. The next topping that I'm featuring is my roasted red pepper on falafel flatbread. And by the way, red peppers are also called capsicums. For this recipe, you will need 1 tablespoon of my vegan butter or butter of your choice. Then just take half of the butter and put it into a small frying pan set over medium-low heat. And then add the sliced, in this case, mini bell peppers, or if you don't have mini bell peppers, you can use a regular bell pepper or capsicum that you've sliced up, and just put that into the frying pan. And then just cook until the bell peppers are at the al dente stage, or still very crispy. By cooking only to this stage, you'll retain most of the nutritional value. Then simply arrange the bell peppers on top of the slice of buttered falafel flatbread and drizzle the remaining melted butter on top. The third option I'm going to show you is my avocado toast on falafel flatbread version. For this keto avocado spread, you'll need about a half a medium-sized avocado, which you scoop out and place in a small bowl and mash with your fork. Add your olive oil, lemon juice, and finely ground salt, and just stir everything to combine. Then take the avocado topping and spread it on your falafel flatbread, which, by the way, you can toast if you want it toasted. I actually prefer it without toasting. If you like, you can stop here, but I like to dress mine up, so I sprinkle a pinch of red pepper flakes and then top with a few slices of cherry tomatoes. Done this way, I have to admit, this is my favorite topping. The next topping is the simplified English cucumber sandwich style falafel flatbread. And the directions for this is very simple. However, you will have to prepare the balsamic vinaigrette, the same one that I used in my avocado strawberry spinach salad. I'll provide a link in the description below to that recipe and the video. The other prep step is to cut the cucumbers into very thin slices, and then just drizzle the balsamic vinegar on top of the cucumber and flip over so both sides get coated. And do allow the cucumbers to rest for a couple minutes so that the cucumbers can absorb the delicious vinaigrette. In the meanwhile, take your vegan butter and spread it on the falafel flatbread. And then arrange the cucumber slices on top. I like to layer them in rows like this because it looks really nice, and because I find that I have better control and can get the same amount of cucumber in every bite. And for this English cucumber version, drizzle any of the remaining balsamic vinaigrette that's in your bowl on top of the cucumbers. It's a sin to waste that delicious flavor. This is my second favorite because it reminds me of the year I spent working in England and having afternoon tea with my daughter and friends. The next open-faced sandwich I'm showing you is my fried mushroom on falafel flatbread. And for this one you just need 2 ingredients. First you'll need my vegan butter and thinly sliced mushrooms. In this demonstration I'm just using my utilitarian white button mushrooms, but you can use any mushrooms that you have on hand or that you prefer. Another couple suggestions are to use portobello mushrooms or oyster mushrooms, or actually any mushroom that you like. And to saute the mushrooms, you simply put the vegan butter into a small frying pan over medium-low heat and let the butter melt. And once the butter is almost melted, place your mushrooms into the pan and try to keep them in a single layer so they can saute and become a nice golden brown. And then flip the mushrooms over and let the other side get golden brown as well. This should only take 2 to 3 minutes depending on how thin your slices are. And when the mushrooms are done to your liking, take a small spoon, scoop out the mushroom flavored butter and drizzle that on top of the slice of bread, and then simply pile the mushrooms on top. And that's all there is to this one. Now for the 6th and last topping, which is my tomato basil vinaigrette on falafel flatbread. The first thing is to chop your basil into very small pieces like this, and take your balsamic vinaigrette, place it into a small bowl or cup, add the chopped basil and stir to combine. For this version I prefer to use a large tomato, which I cut into a fairly thick slice, which I then place into my vinaigrette and basil seasoning, coat one side and then flip it over and coat the other side. Scoop out all of the vinaigrette basil mixture and spread it on top of your flatbread. And then put your tomato on top. It couldn't be easier. And as you can see, these delicious sandwich toppings are very, very easy to make. And there's no reason whatsoever why you have to sacrifice taste and good flavor in order to stay keto and or vegan. And here's a plain slice of bread. I invite you to leave suggestions and comments of what you would put on this slice. And now for the taste test, for which I've recruited an eager volunteer. The final verdict was each of the recipes, including the plain butter one, had 2 thumbs up. As I mentioned already, my personal favorite was the avocado toast with the cherry tomatoes, but my husband's favorite was the roasted bell pepper, with a close second being the English cucumber. He couldn't decide between these two, so I guess they were actually tied. I hope you liked this recipe and the video. Please leave any comments, suggestions, or questions in the description below. And if you're new to my channel, I would be very honored if you would subscribe, turn on your notification bell, because that's very important so that you get all the notifications. Share this video and channel with someone that you know. And most of all, please come back and watch the next video. And I hope to see you next time. Cheers!